Welcome back to the Intuition Incubator. Today, I have with me Emily Bouchard. Emily understands the unique challenges families experience when it comes to love and money. She assists clients in effectively communicating about complex situations that are often emotionally charged. She specializes in step-family dynamics, multi-generational family meetings, rising generation leadership and education, family governance, and family business succession. Emily brings over 20 years of experience and training to her work with individuals, couples, and families. She's the founder of Blended Families Flourishing and Bouchard Bespoke Consulting. Along with her coaching and advisory roles, she's also a facilitator of transformational experiences with horses in unique settings. Welcome, Emily.
Thanks, Abby. Great to be here.
Yay, so excited to have you. So we met actually on a cruise earlier this year of a group of like-minded people, Dr. Joe Dispenza's students, and hit it off. And here we are. Yeah. So I'm super excited to talk to you because, I used to do a lot of family therapy and systems work. And of course, I came from and am in a blended family. And I know that you have been in a blended family. And we talked about some of the really unique challenges that are there and talk about a hotbed for being pulled away from your intuition and feeling in fight or flight and all of those kinds of things. I mean, it's just such rich ground to need to plug into yourself. And then also we were just talking before we got on the show about your work with horses, which are extremely intuitive beings. But I'd love to start with you kind of sharing a little bit about your journey, maybe. Just telling us, what brought you to the work that you do? What draws you to that work?
I love being able to have this conversation with you, Abby, because I don't get to talk very much about intuition and kind of the ineffable things that lead us and where we go. And I came to this work completely through intuition and through synchronistic, serendipitous things that happen. So it's really an amazing thing when you choose to live life from that place of following those nudges and doors that open and not looking at a door that closes as being a problem. So I don't have like a direct path on any level for how I ended up where I am. When I was 18, I was just graduating high school. I was asked by a family friend to volunteer at a camp he was starting for children with cancer. And I was a yes. I don't know how I can be helpful, but you're starting a camp. That sounds amazing. I'd love to help. And I was an arts and crafts instructor, and I got a chance to be in a cabin with the teenage girls. So I was a peer with them. It wasn't like I was with little kids. And I learned so much from these young women, and they really had a profound impact on my life. And I ended up designing a degree in child development. When I was at Penn, they didn't have that as a major. So I created it. I took psychology courses, sociology, folklore, statistics. I just created my own course in terms of what does it mean to be a child growing up when you have adversity, and really looking at what makes us be resilient. And I did a research project with the Children's Hospital in Philadelphia and got, a really effective study in terms of what helps with identity development. I ended up working in therapeutic camping for 12 years, volunteering, being counselor in different camps around the country, and then also continuing my work in education in terms of with children and families. I worked in a hospital setting with children to help them understand what was happening to them medically. I saw what was happening to the families of these children and the stress they were under. And so I ended up getting a master's in social work with an emphasis on marital and family therapy, and ended up working in a really rough section of Dallas where the children I was working with were dealing with drive-by shootings, parents that were dying of drug overdoses, just really terrifically difficult situations. And what allows people to be resilient in those situations? What can be helpful, if anything. So I got trained as a family therapist in that venue and loved it. And then I ended up moving to California, falling in love. And it was through intuition. I just started being curious about what else was out there. And I went to a talk given about education for life. And they talked about the physical development of a child, the mental development of a child, the emotional development of a child, and the spiritual development of a child. And I'm like, I studied at an Ivy League school. I went to get this master's. Nobody ever mentioned anything about the spiritual side of a child. So I got to know about this. So I moved to California to study that approach, and I got educated in yoga and mindfulness and meditation and how to help holistically with the development of a child. And that was fascinating. And then I got married to a wonderful man who had 2 teenagers, and I became a stepmom. And I had been a stepdaughter. My stepmother entered our lives when I was 15. So I got a chance to be in that reverse role. Boy, did I get to draw on my intuition in that role as a stepmom, because there was all this training I had and all these ideas. But then it's like, what actually works in the moment, and what actually serves you as a family? I mean, I'll never forget, there was one time when my younger stepdaughter got so furious with me about something that I said. And I just knew that it wasn't about what I said in that moment. And I was able to access this knowing place inside of me that allowed me to be totally present with her and not go into this justified righteous reaction. And, you know, like there was no part of me that got hooked by it, because it was so out of the blue. And it was so like, this is not about me. Like,
Yeah.
well, I think I asked her to help me do the laundry, you know, and it was like that, to fold the laundry. And she just went off the rails. And I thought, wow, this is a chance to really get to know this young woman who's in front of me. Like, really, like what's going on for her in this moment? And I just dropped in, and I was so curious and interested. And I asked her, what did I say that got you so upset? And I want to know more about what this is about. And all this stuff came out from her in terms of being asked to help, and it was never enough. And like all this thing that I had no idea about. And so it's like, I often talk about this with my clients, like stepping on an emotional landmine that you didn't know was there. And you have all kinds of ways of responding to it. And if you can be present to, there's a chance to get to know this person in front of me, and it doesn't have to be this horrible thing. There's so much possibility that can happen in that space. And so that helped us get closer. We had much better understanding of each other. I promised never to use the word help again. You know, it was like a really great interaction that way. So that's how I've been using it in my own life. And then through some, I don't know, completely serendipitous events, I got referred to a company that consulted with families with family businesses and over 25 million in assets. And I ended up becoming a listening coach for them. And that started me on this journey. And that was in 2004. So it's been 20 years of working with families with billions of dollars, 8 different branches of the family working towards family harmony and decision-making together. And
which, by the way, for the listeners, those people with billions of dollars have the same problems that the people with no dollars have, because we all want to think, oh, if we just didn't have the financial stress, then this would not be no, that's actually not true.
Well, yeah, I often talk about money being like wax on wood, you know, it just amplifies whatever's there, the beauty and the imperfections. It's like, you know, some people liken it to alcohol too, you know. If you're a happy person, you're a happy drunk. If you're an angry person, you know,
right,
it just amplifies whatever's there.
Whatever's going on. Yeah. It's really an amazing story, and definitely sounds super intuitive. You know, I you know, and one of the things that your story really exemplifies, and I did another interview last week with someone kind of similar, where it sounds like from a young age, you kind of had a natural curiosity, and that curiosity really led you through. And I find that so fascinating, because, you know, well, there's not enough curiosity these days anymore. You know, there's a lot of certainty, and people are not feeling safe enough, I think, to be curious in many ways. And I always find it fascinating, though, when people have a history from a young age of just naturally being that way. And I mean, I guess it's not that I didn't feel curious when I was a kid, but curious with the courage to actually go and follow that curiosity. You know, I would say that, you know, my story, I mean, and I don't know, I got to kind of think about it more, but I would say that for me, while I felt very curious, I didn't have the courage or the self-esteem maybe to follow that curiosity. But what I wanted to highlight too is your story about with your stepdaughter. Again, curious, right? And that totally to me sounds like this intuitive moment. And I'll ask you, you know, later, you know, your feeling about intuition, because I get all kinds of different answers. But, you know, I think one of the facets of it is when this force from outside of ourselves comes in and just takes over. And just something told you in that moment to be curious, right? And I wish that I had more stories like that as a stepmother. I mean, I have some, But I have a lot where the other came just a snotty, support, spoiled kid, and the chaos that ensues when you indulge in what the ego mind is telling you, what you are projecting onto whoever it is in that blended family, normally the child or the parent or whoever, whatever role you're in, it really makes it a lot muddier. And look at what a beautiful thing that happened for you, that this became an opening and deep. And I know that you have, even though you're not married anymore, you have very close relationships with your stepkids.
Yeah, my step grandkids too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a very close relationship with my eldest stepdaughter that my younger stepdaughter and I had to, again, my intuition came in. I felt really drawn to protecting my granddaughter when she was in a difficult, abusive situation. And I knew stepping into that role would mean that it would really dramatically impact my relationship with her. And I also knew it would make it so that she could continue to have a relationship with her biological mom and her sister. Because we were trying to figure out, do we call CPS or what do we need to do that would cause the least amount of negative impact while also furthering the health of everybody in the family. And that was one of those situations where it's like head, heart, everything had to be at play, and really like what is the right best thing here, even knowing what the fallout would be. So I want to be clear about that too.
Yeah, but again, I listened to that story and I'm like, courage. Holy shit. First of all, courageous to share it here, and people need to hear it, and courageous to be able to say, I understand this might fracture this relationship and this is going to piss her off. Like this is not going to go over well. But intuitively, I have to listen to something else inside me. And I think so many of the listeners, and people I interact with, I mean, that's like one of the number one things that's just so hard. We get in the way of our intuitive knowing because we're afraid of what's going to happen. We're afraid people are going to be upset, or maybe we're wrong, or we're going to look bad, or we're going to rock the boat. And it literally handcuffs people. And they're in that moment, we are separated from our intuition. And one of the things that strikes me about you is like your energy is very sure, it's not always like this, but your energy is very calm and balanced, and I think that might be a result of an ability to follow your intuition, because the way I think about intuition is I always say this, I say, when you make a decision from your intuition, you don't second guess it, because there's just something in you that just knows. You might suffer. There might be suffering that's involved because, now this relationship is fractured, or this isn't easy, or this doesn't feel good, but you know that you did the right thing. And when we make decisions not from our intuition, those are usually the ones that we're like, well, should I, shouldn't I? What do you think? We're calling people up and, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And it's interesting that you're saying that, because I think, I've had two things that have happened recently where that word courage has come up a lot. And you're giving me a new way of thinking about it. Like, one was I had a amazing gift given to me when I was given a horse, and I chose to receive the gift, and I chose to completely pack up my life and move to be where the horse was, because it was not where I was living. And for a lot of people outside, they would be like, you left living walking distance from the beach in San Diego to go up to a completely different area of Northern California that you've never lived in before because of a horse. Like it would be a little bit baffling. And some people, and I had a wonderful situation in San Diego and created a beautiful life for myself there. And it was one of these moments of, no, this is where I need to be next. And I just made it happen. And it was very quick. I don't know if you've experienced that too, but boy, when I make a decision intuitively, it's quick what happens. And then the other one was I was leading an Institute for Family Success at a very large bank, and a couple of changes happened in terms of leadership and where the direction they were heading, and it was no longer the right fit for me. And I just knew it was time for me to resign that position and go off on my own. And I cannot describe to you the number of people in the corporate structure that remarked on the courage and how brave that was to do. And for me, it was like, but there wasn't really an option. So it was an interesting thing. And I realized, oh, they're choosing to stay working there. That's very important for them to be there. So for them, it would take a tremendous amount of courage to leave. But for me, it was obvious. So I think that's another thing about the intuition.
Yeah, and it's an interesting thing that you're talking about. It makes me think about this for a moment because I'm thinking about, so the person that would say, wow, I could never do that, and that feels courageous, because people will tell me they think of me as fearless, and I'm like, what? In what universe do you perceive me as fearless? Like, that is not how I feel. And, and people are telling you like, yeah, that's courageous. And yet we're having this conversation saying, well, these decisions didn't feel like courage. They just felt like what I had to do, the next right step. Mm-hmm. So as we unwind this, like I'm thinking about, it feels courageous, right? For when we're in the position of, I'm going to worry about what someone thinks. I'm going to be fearful about money. I'm going to be unsure about what the next step is, where I'm going to land, who I'm leaving behind. The amount of clients that I have and have had over the years that are maybe in a position that is not in alignment with them, but can't see their way to leave because of whatever it is that the mind's telling them. You're letting people down, you're failing, where are you going to go, yada, yada, yada. So it really brings up this question of fear, right? Because courage, the way we think of courage is overcoming fear. You didn't have fear in that moment. They had fear thinking about it. It would have taken them courage to do that. Why not? Why haven't you been fearful in these moments?
In those moments where you get like when it's like such obvious knowing, it's just such a given, like that's the next thing to do. So it just feels right. I mean, afterwards there can be like, well, this is interesting. There's a lot of unknowns here.
Right.
So I built up the capacity more and more to be in the discomfort of the unknown. And, because we're both students of Dr. Joe's work, I think that's really made a huge difference recently as I've made some big changes in terms of stepping into this, allowing for the generous present moment and trusting in that and releasing what would be kind of the cultural fears that might show up, or habitual ones, and then really trusting that because it's the unknown, that's where new is going to come from. That's where the growth is. So there's a trust involved in that.
Another great word. Yeah. But there's a lot of good words coming up. So courage and trust, right? Yeah. It's about that trust. What about, I'm curious about, has there been a time where you've made a decision that wasn't intuitive, or you can recall staying where you maybe shouldn't have stayed or went where you shouldn't have gone because you weren't following your intuition, that you look back on and you say, I knew, like I have moments like that. Like I knew I shouldn't have bought that house. I knew at that time we couldn't afford it. I knew that puppy was to try and save my marriage. I did it anyway. Like, do you have any like that? Times that you haven't followed your intuition and you're like, even whether it was a big deal or not, but you look back and like, I kind of know.
That's a good question. I try to look at my life, those touch points, and like, where did I have regret, I guess would be like a way to look at it. And that would be where maybe I didn't follow my intuition. And I have one where I had a dog that I absolutely loved. There was a big white Samoyed, and he was totally love bug, but when he would get out, he would just go, like he would just take off. And my husband at the time started to resent having the dog. And I was having to travel a lot. And so I chose my husband over the dog. And in retrospect,
the dog was the winner.
I mean, it's so funny because things play out the way they will, but I'm no longer married and I don't have that dog, and it's like,
great story.
But I will say that at the time we were kind of like mystic nomads. We were living in our RV and we were driving all around the country and going totally intuitively where our hearts took us to go. It was an amazing 2 years, but it was one of those things where if he got out, like when we were at a rest stop or something, we might never find him. And what a horrible thing for the dog. And it just like, it made so much logical sense, but It is something that I was like, I wish there had been another way to go about that. Like, cause I definitely saw that his resentment towards the dog was driving the decision more so than my desire to not have it. So that was a tricky thing, but it's hard in relationship. You always need to be looking at what's best for both people. And at the time it made sense for a number of reasons.
Yeah, this is such a great, you're bringing such rich examples because I think about this, some of these have to really be pulled apart a little bit, right? Because there's regret and there's remorse. And it doesn't necessarily mean that wasn't an intuitive decision, right? Like the dog, it could be really bad for the dog, right? Like, but that decision could have gone down anyway, right? It could be the person's in a decision and they're so anxious about their husband being upset that they impulsively get rid of the dog. It could be that their husband's upset and they are thoughtful about the fact that, hey, I'm traveling a lot. It isn't really fair. I'm not taking care of the dog. He means something to me too. My husband's important to me too. And you make that decision very thoughtfully, right? It could just be an intuitive hit. Like, this is probably best for the dog. Doesn't mean you might not regret it. Like in terms of, or I wouldn't say regret, have remorse, like, I mean, I think those are those things that happened in my past that I'm remorseful about, but it doesn't mean I don't understand that they needed to happen or that they weren't intuitive
right
in the moment. And I think also something that you and I probably share is this sense of what happened, whatever it was, even if we regret it, it is what needed to happen.
Yeah,
because it happened.
That for sure. Yes, that's definitely the best way to live.
Path. Exactly. Right. It makes it easier to live that right way. And right. Instead of like going around and around. Oh, I shouldn't have done that. My life would have turned out differently. No.
I know. I love that phrase, don't should on yourself. I use that a lot. It's just not useful at all. And I celebrate the fact that I don't have a lot of regrets in my life. Like, and I think that is because of choosing to live from that intuitive place. And I'll say that a lot of that stems from, because you made me think about this when you were talking about from a young age having that curiosity. My mother died really suddenly when I was 14. And the gift of her death happening the way it did and how it happened is the absolute knowing of the impermanence of life, and that it's quite something that we're alive. So there's this deep knowing of how precious each moment is and wanting to make the most of it because you don't know what's going to happen. And I think that that's been a real guiding force for me. That's allowed, like, it's just brought more curiosity to situations than certainty, because I know that you can't really be certain about much of anything.
That's really amazing. I always say that we come into this life with we're given help. We're given certain help, like from source, right? And we all have different help. I always say my youngest son, he was not given a fully abled body, but he was given a lot of help with his wit and his intellect and his character and his manipulation skills and his likability and his talents, like lots of help, right? And I was given, different help as well, right? Like I'm articulate, I can speak, I can get a message across, I have an able body, like there's certain things, right? And other people, we come in, we have financial things like that. And then other people have other talents and not financial things, whatever it is, right? But one of the help that you clearly seem to have gotten coming into this world is this perspective. Because at 14, to lose a parent, I know many people who have had that experience and even having the experience losing them later, or just loss in general, that did not, and certainly at 14, did not say, was not able to turn this at some time later in their life into the gift of this happening the way that it is that I always understood impermanence, right? In the work that I do, we talk a lot about what is the gift or opportunity in this life circumstance. And that one is a really tough one for people to wrap their arms around when you have a loss. That's not to negate the grieving process. Right. Grief is for sure. It's an honoring of, we're not rushing to say this was the greatest thing. No, that's not what we're saying.
No,
but
it's
to
all
take
about
wisdom.
It's the narrative of it. Yeah. And it's, it's taken, years to get to that place, but it's a place of peace. And it also helps me see, like, I have a ton of fear. I have a lot of fear in my life.
Fear some of your fear, because you don't even have a voice that sounds fearful. It's just it's just sort of like a mellow sail out on the ocean. How does your fear manifest?
Well, I'll tell you, like being given the horse was extraordinary, and like to take on the responsibility of a life that of an animal that I didn't know anything about, right? And wanting to make sure that I'm doing the right by the animal. And also every time I go to ride him, and I moved to the ranch where he lived so that I could be around him and really understand and learn as much as I could about they have to offer us. I mean, there's 9 horses on this property. They roam it freely. It's quite something. And I just got a miniature pony who's got a whole bunch of other energy. They're enormous animals and they're very strong, and they're constantly tuning into their surroundings, and they can move on a dime. And so there's a ability, you need to be aware. And if you are fearful around them, they'll pick up on it. And so I get a lot of messages and I learn a lot from being with them. Oh my gosh. I mean, from the moment I started learning how to ride and like even getting on the horse, like I've had to overcome so much fear. And every single time, it's not like it's not there anymore. It's just has less sway over me. But there's a driving force to want to grow, want to learn, want to have that ability to connect. Because my teacher is quite something, and she helps you see how you can connect energetically with the horse and have the horse move with very subtle movements of your energy and indicating that way, and not like using the reins to do it. And have that level of connection with another being really shows you how whatever you're emanating has an impact on those around you. And that's what I've really been wanting to dive in and study. And so it's been a lot of coming face to face with myself and my fears and the stories and where I'm certain and what I'm certain about what I can do and not do. Like that's the other thing too, is just recognizing how much I've bought into beliefs about my limitations. And the horses have really helped me to expand away from them. Yeah.
Wow. How have the horses shown you not to believe in your limitations specifically?
If I have a story about not being able to get on the horse and then I'm able to get on the horse, it's a very physical experience of that. Like I did that. Nobody picked me up and put me on the horse. I did that.
Yeah.
Or getting the horse to move in the way that I'm wanting to. I'm doing that. Like, it's not like the teacher's saying, okay, now the horse is going to trot, and the horse hears that and then starts trotting. Like I need to be the one to engage the horse in a certain way to have that happen. So it's very visceral, it's very physical, and it's just me with them. And so if I have a story of, oh, I don't know how to do that, I can't do that, and like the default to, oh, I can't, I don't know, so I can't.
Yeah.
It's like it's like I just can fall into that so quickly,
Yeah.
And so having all of these experiences in my body of, I don't know, I figured it out. Oh, I don't know. Oh, I learned how to do it. It like creates those different neural pathways, and it's so physical, and there's like this physical memory of it that then it translates to other areas of my life where it's like, oh, I need to send out an invoice. I don't know how to do it. I can figure that out. Like it doesn't have to get me in the same way that it would have in the past, where I might avoid or hire somebody to do something because I don't know how to do it. It's like,
Yeah.
you have to do it yourself. It gets me to do that.
Well, and you're also really talking about the moving center, right? The taking action, which I think is so, we tend to get stuck in our head, kind of going around and around and analyzing and thinking. And people will say all the time, I need to think about this more. I just need to think about it. I'm like, no, that's exactly what you need to not do. Like the taking the action creates the change, right? It starts the neural pathway. It creates in you this belief. And I can so relate to this, I can't. That just has been a lifelong thing for me. I can't. It's so deep, that sometimes, what I literally am like, feel like I'm just hurling myself out there because it's like, it just gotta do it. Yeah.
No, I love that, the believe, behave, become, right? It's like, yeah, I had to believe in myself enough to do this. And then I behave in a way that shows me I can, and then I can become it, and
sometimes it's behave, believe, become, right?
Yeah, sometimes you have to fake it till you yeah, exactly. But there has to be that sense of believing. Otherwise you wouldn't try to do the behavior. I think there has to be that place of,
that's true.
Some part of me believes that I can do this,
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's true. That's true. And, with horses, I remember there's a one of the guys that I used to volunteer with at Dr. Joe, he had a ranch, and we went up there when he showed us. He stood in the ring with the horse and literally, like with his mind, told the horse to start circling. And then he looked at all of us and said, I'm going to have it start to run now. He did not touch this thing. He just, with his mind, the horse started running. And it was just unbelievable. And I took my younger son years ago to someone who worked therapeutically with horses. And she said that she had clients. She had a client, a young boy, autistic or something. And one day he came and the horse wouldn't let him on. And she was like, that's so weird. And so she brought him to another horse, and that horse wouldn't let him on. And these are like really nice horses, like not a problem. 5 minutes later, the kid had a seizure.
Wow.
They literally know. They literally know before us. It's amazing, right? Talk about mirror. You use that word mirror. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, it is such a mirror. And I remember that day that I took my son up to the ranch, and he was frustrated because this horse he was young then. He didn't get the horse he wanted. And this horse wouldn't let him put whatever, the bit in his mouth or whatever, her mouth. And he was frustrated and annoyed. And I was kind of fearful too, just because they're big animals, like you said, And I had this really nice horse. I said, why don't you take my horse and I'll go to your house? Because I could tell he was so frustrated. And I went over to that horse and I started just doing some heart math, and I started getting into coherence. And I was just like, I'm just going to play. I'm just going to see what happens if I get into coherence. Because I was afraid, because this horse had been kind of, whatever she just wasn't, I was afraid too, because he had said, and I saw it. And I just got into coherence. And I'm telling you, sure enough, she was completely fine with me. And then afterwards, I told him, I said, let's get into coherence and try again. And it's unbelievable.
And it's so accessible. I mean, I think that's the thing. And that's another way that they really show us, right? It's like, if I can self-regulate here and get into coherence here, totally different relationship out in front of me. Yeah, exactly. And it's with people and with horses and with dogs. And, it's like, what we emanate has frequency. It has a impact on everything around us. Yeah.
It's amazing. So do you do that in your work with step families as well? How do you use that type of coherence with step families? And how do you use your intuition there?
That's a great question. So bringing intuition to my work with step families, it's a given. I have to go in, like, I've worked with probably thousands by now, and I have to go in with each one like clean slate. Like, who are these people? And what is it that's needed in this moment? So it's always about getting really coherent here before I work with anybody, so that I can really be attuned to what that moment requires of me. Like, what is it that I can bring to it that would be of the greatest value and service to them in those moments? If I go in with an idea or knowing or thinking what needs to happen, or a process I want to do, or some sort of agenda in my mind about what I think, inevitably it's not the right thing, or it's, we'll try and just go splat or something. But if I really get present first and check in and have people check in from where they are, and have all of us get in a way coherent with each other, like get present with each other, I'll often do like a presencing exercise. And it might not be meditation, because some people don't want to like close their eyes and do the breathing, but I'll do something where I'll just say, let's everybody just take a moment to get present. So just let your eyes get soft and look at the room and notice what's in the room, or wherever we are, whatever's in front of you. If you're on screen, maybe that you didn't notice before, or that you have in front of you, like just to have like that presencing right in that moment, right?
Yeah.
Notice the size of the screen. Notice that when you're looking at the screen, you can also see the window out of the corner of your eye, and maybe the door over the corner, and it just allows for that convergent and divergent focus to happen. And then we all get present with each other. And I let's just take a moment to notice who's on the screen and where they are on the screen, and just get present with each other. So there's a way of bringing that generous present moment to everyone. And then speaking into that, like, what is it that we're here for today? Like, this is your time. It's the most precious commodity we have. What is it that you would love to have happen today? Like, if we had a really successful session or family meeting or whatever it is, what is it that that would be a resounding yes for you. Like, wow, that was really successful. So it's very aspirational and focused on what they're wanting to accomplish, because then it moves us in that direction too. So I think that's a lot of what I do to get present with the people that I'm with. And then I totally trust that the right methodology, the right practice, whatever it might be that they need will show up. So I do agendas for family meetings, because I'm working with families that are like, they're very business oriented, and there's a ROI, and there's, and so you always have to have an agenda. And so I'll put on the agenda like broad topics, and I'll always put at the bottom something to the effect of how far we get and what content we end up covering will depend on the quality and caliber of what shows up in the space and where we end up going. And we will touch on all of the things that are on this agenda. It's like you kind of manage
Calm them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You provide the roadmap, and you like, we'll see how far we get. And we might take us in tangents. We might go down a tributary. We'll see where it takes us. So
yeah, no, I love that. And I often do that with my clients as well. And I would say, just to bring presence, because people can come in, our hair's on fire all the time. We're dealing with so many things. And so you come flying into a family meeting that, like you said, you're taking the time and the money and the, whatever to sit with me or you and do this. And it's amazing. People will come in, and in the beginning, you might say, hey, how you doing? Whatever. And they have, this is what's on my mind, or they'll put on their form before I see them. This is what's on my mind. And then you do a little presence exercise and say, now, what is most important now? And something entirely either different comes up, or usually what is at the crux of whatever they had written about, like what's deep below the noise. And to your point, you said, time is our biggest commodity. And, I think it used to be, but now I don't think it is. I think it's our attention. And that's what we're doing, right? When we're focusing our attention, to give someone your attention, to give each other our attention, is the greatest gift in this, world that we now live in, that we could right? Because I talk about this in group all the time. You're running, people, right? And that fear system gets us focused on all the wrong things.
Yeah. And it's because of that discomfort, right? Managing the discomfort. I'll tell you, you'll appreciate this. I was on a group Zoom mastermind this morning with some really powerful women, and everybody came, not hair on fire, but with like lots of different things going on in lives, good, difficult, whatever it might be. And everyone that's chatting, and I initially started on the Zoom call outside walking, and a couple of the horses were really close by to where I was. And so I just said, hey, I wanted to show you guys where I am right now. And I was in the picture, but I had the horses behind me, and everybody just stopped and got still. And then one of them said, wow, did you just feel what happened to us? I was like, I know. Isn't it amazing? Like, even distance wise, they're so present. It brings presence. I just think that coherence happens so naturally. And it completely shifted all the energy on the call.
What a gift to live right there. And just anytime you're feeling it, all you got to do is just go be in that presence and just have it wash over you.
Yeah, it's my favorite thing to share it. And the retreats we do here are just so rewarding because of that. Because it's like the horses get to be the show. It's like I get to enjoy seeing the transformation that happens for people, and just providing that space is so amazing.
So are the retreats step family oriented, or is that anybody can go to those?
Anybody. It can be a solo for somebody that's like in transition in their lives. It can be for couples that are looking to maybe do some really deep work around their issues related to money or other discord. And then the families, or the step families or multi-generational families. And then groups. We do groups too, like groups of women or groups of like next gen leaders and families with family businesses, that sort of thing. We also do, what's the word for it? There's a give to give kind of focus of it. So like people come for these retreats, and then some of what they pay goes to pay for people in need getting to have the retreats too. So we had some parents that had children that were autistic come, and they got a chance to have a bit of a retreat here. And I'll never forget, like one dad had this remarkable session with a horse that he chose. Horse kind of chose him. And at one point he came over to us and he's like, this horse doesn't want to be with me. It wants to be with those other horses out there. And when he had turned and moved towards us, he wasn't aware of it, but the horse had moved and come right over and was like standing on behind his right shoulder. And we just observed it. We said, we're so curious what had you come to that conclusion, because we're seeing something that seems to indicate something differently. And why don't you turn and look at what's happening right now and see if you still have that same conclusion. And it was so valuable for him to see that and to see how there's a way in which he's kind of preemptively removing himself from his family dynamics as opposed to recognizing how much he's loved and wants to be engaged with.
Oh my God, I have chills.
Yeah, it was just that moment, right? And he came to it himself. Like, we didn't know that was his experience. And then it's a beautiful thing, because all we do is observe and notice and provide a safe space for them. And then they get to see their narrative that they're living in, and where they can rewrite it. Maybe it isn't as accurate as they think it is.
And these are the subconscious programs, right? That we don't realize. Oh God, I see it so much, that we don't realize we're feeling disconnected. We're feeling from some old program. Maybe it's in our childhood. Maybe it's not even ours. Maybe it's ancestral. Maybe it's energy. Maybe it's, not from other lifetimes, that no one wants us around. We behave like no one wants us around. Have an experience in our life of feeling that people don't want us around. And it's all generated from within, right? And then when we change, everything else changes.
I know. And I really love giving people a chance to see that the certainty about their thoughts is not necessarily going to serve them. And like, our thoughts that we've listened to are so inaccurate. And I think things like animals and being in nature just gives us a chance to rewrite that and get us, maybe there's something bigger, maybe there's something else here. Maybe these things that have run me for a long time aren't as true as I think they are,
Yeah. Oh, I think it's so true. Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, that idea of questioning the mind. And I always say, you can't get something that you're not willing to receive. And becoming aware of what that is. I see that so often, particularly in people that maybe want relationships and aren't having them in their life. And they'll say, no, I want it. I totally want it. I can totally receive it. I can, they're not seeing where they're in their own way. But if that's what the world is reflecting to them, then something's going on. And, for me this year, it was all about, I just had an idea in my head. Like, I want to deepen my ability to be vulnerable. Right. And what better place to do that than a marriage. Right. So I just, unbeknownst to anybody, went on my business and said, I'm going to work on my ability to be more vulnerable. And I started doing that in my marriage. My husband had no idea, whatever, and started pushing myself, right? In moments where maybe I wouldn't say something, and I did, opening myself up more emotionally, all of these things. And it was really crazy because, we would have these moments, that and I'd be feeling like, oh, this is scary and this was whatever. And they would be good and whatever. But when it really hit me was one morning, I can't remember, well, I do remember, but he was saying something. He said something, or made some offer to me to do something for me. And it hit me in such a profound way that, like, I never would have felt it that way before. Like, I would have been like, oh, no, thanks. That's okay. And instead, even though I did say, no, thanks, I didn't want that, or I didn't think it wasn't in my best interest to have him help me with that. But I was just like, I cannot believe that he offered to do that for me. Like, how did I miss how much this man loves me? How did I miss that? And that it wasn't that he has not been there in that way. It's that I couldn't receive it because of what I was living inside myself. And it was this effort, that took a year for me to really, and it's evolving, right? It's still evolving for me to really say, I want to be able to be more vulnerable in my life so that I can create closer relationships. I changed. And then he did what he would always do. And I literally was brought to tears, which I never even cry. I never cry.
Well, I think you need to say that past tense, because
Yeah, I never used to
making
cry.
that decision to be vulnerable is
Right.
like, yeah, tears are going to flow, right? Because I mean, tears flow when we touch into what we really care about. And you're allowing yourself to go deeper into that and talk about courage, right? Like,
That was courage.
yeah, that's
That was
beautiful.
courage.
Yeah.
So, Emily, tell me what you want people to know. If you could tell the audience one thing or share a message, what do you just desperately want people to know? What do you feel like would be the most valuable thing that if people understood or knew? What do you want to leave people with?
Wow. I love that you asked that. think I think the most important driving force for me with whatever I'm doing is take the risk to share what's in your heart, right? So maybe it is really about that vulnerability. That I think because my mother died when I was young so suddenly, and there was not a chance to talk about things, I just feel like it's an imperative. Like, don't wait to say what's in your heart. Don't put off the things that matter most to you in terms of your relationship. And it could be as simple as make sure your beneficiaries are up to date in your estate plan. Like, I'm not kidding. If you were to die tomorrow, will the people that you love get what you want? Don't live your life like, oh my God, I can die tomorrow, because you don't want to be neurotic about it. That at the same time, go to bed at night at peace that what's needed to be said has been said, what decisions that need to be made have been made, so the people that you love know, and be willing to do that. And it does feel risky sometimes because it might not be as received as you'd like, or it might, but all you have is you and who you are. And you might be surprised when you take the risk to share it. I worked with a family that was so powerful and so impactful in the world, and they did not know how to acknowledge each other. They did not know how to give acknowledgments or receive acknowledgments. And I felt like that was the most rewarding thing I've ever done in my career, was expanding for people the ability to acknowledge each other in a really meaningful way that was validating and where they felt seen. Because I think that's what people want more than anything. Avoiding doing that because either it was never done for you, or you don't want them to get a big head, or whatever it might be, misses the mark in terms of what happened. What do you want them to know about what you think about them if you're not here anymore? So I guess that's my long answer to your question.
No, I love it. And I love something else about what you said in all of that. You said helping this family hear each other and celebrate one another and stand for one another. You said, I think that is I don't know how you said it, but something like that was the greatest thing I did in my career. I love that, because how many times, and I say this all the time, how many times like people are like, I've got to achieve this amount of money, I've got to get this award, then I'll be happy about my career, then I'll be, blah, blah. It's all bullshit. That is not true. When you get that thing, your saboteur will be like, all right, what next? What's next? Like, that is not coming from your essence in your heart, right? That comes from ego. What we remember are those moments, right? And so I always say, like, wouldn't it be amazing if at dinner parties, instead of talking about, what happened this quarter, what numbers you did, what blah, 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 you said, yeah, I just witnessed the most amazing thing. I'm learning how to share myself with other people. I'm learning how to receive. And it's been the most incredible journey.
That's beautiful. Yeah.
I love that.
That other quality of being with each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not focused as much on the doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when the acknowledgments have to do with who are you to me, right? Like that's the depth of it.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And I really see a webinar or something in our future together.
I love that.
Co-facilitating something.
Oh, fun. I would love it. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. I know everybody's going to love this, and I'll have information of how to get in touch with Emily in the show notes. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Abby. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks so much.